Oh, my God!
What you've just heard are the desperate cries of Darlie Routier, a 27-year-old Texas housewife, as she begs police for help after a brutal attack on her 2 young sons. According to Darlie, an intruder broke into her home and fatally stabbed her 2 boys, 5-year-old Damon and 6-year-old Devin, at the same time slashing her neck. The murders made national headlines, and with the publicity came sympathy and support from everywhere for the grieving couple. As the case unfolded, though, the evidence led police further away from the home invasion theory and more toward Darlie.
We believe that the white male suspect, described by Darlie Routier as the man that attacked her and murdered her children, never existed. We also believe that the wounds present on Darlie Routier were self-inflicted.
With no eyewitnesses and only circumstantial evidence to go on, a jury found Darlie guilty of murder. Darlie now sits on death row and could be the first woman in over 100 years to be executed by the state of Texas. But loyal family members haven't given up hope and still search for that one piece of evidence that will prove Darlie innocent so she can return to her waiting husband and only surviving son. We will be back with the family's version of what happened that night, and we'll also hear from a member of the jury that convicted Darlie. She says there's critical evidence that the family might not want you to know about. I hope you'll join us as we discuss the conviction of a death row mom. Now, Darlie's family has never wavered in their support of her innocence. Joining us to give their version of what happened that night is Darlie's husband, Darren, her sister, Dana, her mother, Darlie Key, and Darren's mother, Cyrilda. Let's just go back to the night of the murders, Darren, and start with you, because you heard your wife screaming and came running into the family room where she had been sleeping with the boys. You had been upstairs with your little 7-month-old. What was the first thing that rushed through your mind when you entered the scene?
Well, it seems like the very first thing that I remember hearing is a glass break. And then this screaming, this huge, loud screaming. And just getting closer and closer to me. And I don't remember if I put my pants on. I don't remember my glasses being on. All I remember is I was surprised that it didn't just jump off the balcony onto the bottom of the floor. That's how scared it was.
You left the baby up there in the crib.
Right, left the baby up there, but I didn't check the baby yet. I didn't do that until later on.
Was Darlie on the phone with 911 when you got there?
No, when I came down the stairs, I passed her. She was screaming, Devin, 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 Devin. Just freaking. She's screaming and she's hollering, and that 911 tape is exactly what I heard. She went straight to the phone, straight to the sink, get the towels, and I was straight to Devin.
The thrust of the knife was so powerful that with one of the boys, it penetrated the chest, broke his ribs, and stuck through the floor underneath him.
I know.
Now, do you see them all agreeing to that? You see them all agreeing to that right there. Yeah. Well, I asked Danelle, and you can see it in our comments. I asked Danelle, I said, why did Darren and your mom, agree that the knife went through one of the boys into the carpet and chipped the concrete? And she said, oh, that's something Toby Shook started. She said they got that from Toby Shook. This show was filmed in 1998. And Toby Shook did make the comment that one of the boys was impaled in 2008. So I'm gonna put it back to that again, because these lies start here. See, Darren should know that knife never went through any of the boys and chipped the carpet. He should know that. But yet they agree with it. Watch, I'll do it again here real quick.
She's screaming and she's hollering, and that 911 tape is exactly what I heard. I mean, she went straight to the phone, straight to the sink, get the towels, and I was straight to Devin.
The thrust of the
Straight to the phone, straight to the sink. But we don't hear running water on the 911 call. You don't hear it.
knife was so powerful that with one of the boys, it penetrated the chest, broke his ribs, and stuck through the floor underneath him.
I know. Not a one of them corrected her. In fact, they agreed with her.
And his eyes were still open.
When I got to Devin, he wasn't moving, and I started to administer CPR. The first thing that I was thinking through my mind is that this glass break, I thought, well, when I went to bed...
Now, he said when I got to Devin, he wasn't moving. Darlie said, Darlie led him, Devin. The paramedic, I believe it was Koshak, when they got in there, Damon was still looking at him. And he was a fighter, he said. He was fighting. So why did he skip right over Damon and go to Devin? Right? Well, that's because she was hollering, Devin. And then when Waddell got there, no, he went out in the garage. She led him away. Now, how come he didn't realize that Damon still had life in him?
Damon, the youngest one, was underneath the table. And then he must have popped the glass table up, and the glass table must have broke and hurt Devin. Well, when I get downstairs, I mean, he's laying there. The coffee table's all turned over. The couch is pushed back. The lamps, I mean, everything's messed up.
He said the couch was pushed back. That couch was not pushed back.
But when I get to Devin, there's no glass. I don't see any glass, but he's got these huge gashes in his chest.
Part of the criticism and part of what was used at trial against your wife was the 911 call.
Right.
The investigators said that she was unduly concerned with prints on the knife. She said to the operator, the dispatcher, that the intruder came in, that he had dropped a knife, and the dispatcher said, don't pick it up, and she said, I already did.
Well, sure. That's what I would say if somebody said, don't pick it up. She asked her a question and she was responding. Even though she was hysterical, she was in shock.
As you know, they said, well, she should have been administering help to her little boys rather than...
Well, the thing about the knife is Darlie kept mentioning the knife. She also said, she told one of the nurses that she knocked the knife out of the intruder's hand. She was worried about the prints. She was overly worried about that weapon. We could have gotten the prints, maybe. That's not what you want to worry about right now. And the knives were made with, Bakelite brand plastic that are designed not to hold oils and salts from the skin. So there would have been no prints on that knife anyway.
I'm concerned about, oh my God, my prints are on the
she's
knife.
running around.
I was there, remember? I mean, there was 21 towels. 5 of them had blood on them. 3 of them were on one boy, and 2 were on the other.
He's sitting right there lying because all of the first responders that came in did not see towels on none of the boys. None of them. He's sitting right there lying.
She's got the phone in her hand, all in a 5-minute period. I mean, what do you want her to do? I'm doing CPR. I've been certified for 7 years to do CPR. I know how to do it. She is getting help. She got all those policemen, all those fire trucks, and the emergency crews.
Plus she's injured herself also.
See, now he's saying what is she supposed to do? So she didn't help. And he's like, so what is she supposed to do? Well, while he's working on Devin, why is she not over at Damon? Why is she not over there at Damon doing the same thing?
Did you even know that there was a gash on her throat at the
No,
time?
I didn't know until they brought her to the door that she was even cut, bleeding, or anything.
In the court transcripts, that was another point that came out, was that Darlie was pressing one of the towels against her own wound and not helping the boys.
Now, the truth of the matter is that the first officer that was on the scene, he went into shock, just like
He did not go into shock. You can hear him talking.
We were. He looked like a deer in the headlights.
Well, I mean, the brutality of that scene.
I don't blame him for that. I blame him for the things that he said that he did not do. He said that he started to go into the garage where Darlie said the man left. He said, if I go out there, I get killed, then who am I to protect the family? You know, he stood there, and then I freaked because...
Yeah, because he couldn't go out in the garage. And he's not really supposed to administer CPR or anything like that either. He can't be down on the ground helping. He doesn't know if anybody's in there or not, so he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. If he looks to him like he's freaking, it's probably because that officer is more aware.
I've got 2 babies laying on the floor. I'm giving CPR to one, and the other one's dying.
I'm giving CPR to one, and the other one's dying. How come he didn't say, I'm giving CPR to one, Darlie's giving CPR to the other one, and this cop's just standing there? He doesn't say what Darlie's doing.
When did you know that your wife was a suspect?
When they arrested her.
How many days after the murder?
12.
Up until then, you'd spoken freely with authorities without the benefit of an attorney, thinking you didn't need one?
Every day, innocent people don't need attorneys, is what I always thought.
I want to know why they didn't focus on you, why you were eliminated as a suspect so early on. Lots of evidence that we're going to get into and talk about today. The family wants you to hear what they believe happened that night. We're going to tell you how the jury reacted as well to this video of Darlie. It was at her children's gravesite. This was 7 days after the murders. And what other evidence did they have to convict her? We'll hear from one of the jurors right after this. We're talking about the murder of 2 beautiful little boys who were stabbed in their home. Their mother sits on death row now, accused of the murder. Let's kind of go down with some of the evidence piece by piece. The knives. We mentioned she said, my prints are on the knife. Now you tell me that ultimately there were no conclusive prints found to identify anyone.
No prints on the knives. But stop and think, if she really did this, she could have wiped that knife off and never mentioned it if she was guilty.
Now
not if she had to pick it up and stab Damon twice. Which is what we believe, is that after she came and dropped that saw, she may have wiped the knife off. You know, she had to stab him twice because he was crawling up towards. He was trying to get down that hallway, as it looks to me, and from where he was found.
The knife that was used to kill the boys, a different knife from the knife that cut her throat?
On one. See,
there's a possibility.
Yeah, there's a very strong possibility that there was 2 knives used in this.
Where do they get this strong possibility? Because no forensic person ever said that.
One of them was either bayonet or a sword-type knife that would be sharp edges on both ends, because of the thickness and the width of it would be different than what it was. There was no blood of Devon's, the oldest ones, on the knife that was used on Darlie and Damon.
We know.
Right. There was no blood of Devon's. And Damon's blood was on that knife. Right? She's so worried about it, in my opinion, you know, is because that she was doing a cleanup at the sink. She probably did wipe the knife off, in my opinion. Right? And she had to wipe the knife off, be sure her prints ain't on it. And then she runs that sock down the alley. There doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of blood. Because, again, if there were an intruder in there, he would have had blood all over him. He would have had blood on his shoes. There was just no blood trail from either that had headed down that sock. So I feel like that once she came back in, that she was probably getting ready to call 911, cut her own throat. We don't know. But to me, I feel like Damon was crawling away and she stabbed him again. There's no blood of Darlie's on the knife, which is odd in itself because her cut, you know, it should have the whole blade should have went across her neck.
you're one of the jury members who convicted Darlie Routier. You all were persuaded to believe that the slash on her throat, which she said happened from the same intruder, was self-inflicted?
Yeah.
Why?
Anybody who is in a state of panic, who just killed her 2 kids, you can do anything to yourself.
She's talking about the adrenaline rush that a killer would get.
I beg to differ.
To make anyone believe that you didn't do it.
I talked to 3 surgeons.
Have you ever killed any children? Do you know what situation you would be in? Do you know how you would be?
Look, now they're going at the juror already. All she did was state her opinion. And you got Dana leaning over in her seat and snapping at her already. All she's doing is stating her opinion. Right? So I'm going to go back.
You can do anything to yourself.
I think these people are family. That looks like Darren's dad right there. Leo.
I beg to differ.
To make anyone believe that you didn't do it.
I talked to 3 surgeons.
Have you ever killed any children? Do you know what situation you would be in?
Did you hear the crowd? Even the crowd is going, oh, come on, at Dana.
Is in a state of panic, who just killed her 2 kids. You can do anything to yourself.
I beg to differ.
To make anyone believe that you didn't do it.
I talked to 3 surgeons.
Have you ever killed any children? Do you
Have you ever killed any children? What a smart-ass comment, right?
know what situation you would be in? Do you?
The crowd is even like, oh, come on, at Dana. Look at her. Confrontational. Rena Way has the right to give her opinion. Cirilla hadn't said anything.
You know how you would be?
I talked to 3 different surgeons that are not involved in this, and they said that it would be almost physically impossible to bear that pain, and it came and touched the carotid sheath over the carotid artery. Now, how would she medically know when to stop?
What about the splatter pattern? You know, there's something called luminol that is used to detect blood that has even been wiped up from a surface,
correct.
And they found this over the kitchen sink, and I believe the jurors believe that that's where Darlie cut her own throat.
We have theories. We can't say that for sure.
Well,
Did Darlie claim that she actually saw the murders take place? She had been asleep. She can't remember. She can't remember even the slash to her own throat?
no.
She had no pain.
Was that
Well,
not
that's the whole
convincing that
thing.
someone could sleep through that?
No.
She didn't.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
She
not.
did not
They
sleep
were
through it.
feet
Nobody ever said she
away
slept
from her head. Feet. That's all. Just feet away from her head.
She has blocked it out. Her mind shut down, and that's why we'll do the regression and
I'll
prove
tell
that
you
you're wrong.
that if my children were feet away from my head, the first child may have gotten stabbed, but the second one, he wouldn't have gotten near without getting through me.
And they also knew that the reason Darlie said that she was sleeping down there is because Drake would move around in his crib, and that would wake her. It didn't wake Darren. It didn't even wake Drake. And she had been down there for an entire week, right? Every night, Darren's putting the baby to bed. She's not going up there because the baby would keep her awake. Instead of dealing with what the issue is with the baby rumbling so much in his sleep, instead of, being up there in case, kids move around. She just felt like she just not deal with the whole situation. Oh, and fuck him. I'll sleep down here because I'm getting my sleep. Right? Well, because that's not the reason she was down there. She had been down there for a week because Darren and Darlie had been fighting for a week, and she was withholding the punani. That's why her wedding ring. Why is her wedding ring off? In all this other jewelry, was she planning on selling her wedding ring? She was down there because they were fighting.
Now,
That's right, crowd.
for my head. The first child may have gotten stabbed, but the second one, he wouldn't have gotten near without getting through me.
Well,
Now,
had bruises up and down her arms, solid bruises that were proven.
How do you think she got the bruises? Yeah, I believe that Devin kicked the crap out of her. Do you understand that? The only way that he's going to get a wound on his butt if he is being stabbed in the chest is if he has his feet up and he is kicking. He's
Your mother is responsible when you die.
You're a member of a jury.
You will be held responsible.
Most of you
Look at that. Look at the way they're doing her, right? Look at the way they're doing her. Now, she served on a jury. She didn't ask. She didn't ask to be on that jury. That's as a citizen, we have to serve on juries when they send us these things, right? Look at Cyrilda pointing at her.
Is if he has his feet up and he is kicking. He's
Now look at her. Look at Cyrilda. They're in their face, and they do this to this day. Now they just have supporters that do it.
Your mother is responsible when you die.
You're going to be held responsible when you die, pointing at her. And this is a citizen that got brought into their drama.
You're a member of a jury.
You will be held responsible.
Were most of you parents? Yes. Most of you were parents. I can't imagine being there, and you've heard, we're going to hear an hour of this evidence. You heard months of it. Was the jury wanting to go after this woman, or initially when you first heard it, was the jury hoping to God that she was not guilty?
We hoped that she wasn't guilty. We were hoping to go in there and find her not guilty. We don't want to see a mother do that.
What was it that persuaded you the most?
There isn't one thing or another thing. I mean, that videotape is pretty devastating, and yes, we watched it a lot.
Let's look at the videotape. This was at the grave site. It was on...
I just love the way that Rena Way comes back at her. Look, she's pissed.
7 days after the murder, and Darren, this was your son's birthday?
Yes.
Can we see the tape, please, Hal? And this was asked to be replayed time and time again by the jury.
That's just because they were smart enough to push play and rewind.
Look how smart and rude they're getting with them.
So here is Darlie, and Dana was there too. This was asked to be replayed time and time again by the jury.
That's just because they were smart enough to push play and rewind.
So here is Darlie, and Dana was there too, basically celebrating the birthday. And what was the problem with this?
The silly string, and you know why? Dana remembered that the boys loved silly string. Darlene didn't know a thing about it. And on the tape that they weren't allowed...
Darlene didn't know a thing about what her boys loved, but her sister did. Here's the doting mother, right? Her focus is all on her boys. She lived for those boys. But Darlie didn't know a thing about something they loved. You just heard that come out of her mother's mouth.
Basically celebrating the birthday. And what was the problem with this?
The silly string, and you know why? Dana remembered that the boys loved silly string. Darlene didn't know a thing about it.
You heard it.
And on the tape that they weren't allowed to hear,
Nobody said they weren't allowed to hear that. As a matter of fact, the 14-hour surveillance tape that Jim Patterson and Chris Froush put in, it was a 14-hour long tape, right? Greg Davis told him he could put it in. Right? It's right in the transcript. He said he didn't object to them putting it in. Doug Mulder didn't want to put it in. Doug Mulder didn't want to put it in because it doesn't show anything. Darlie Key claims to have a copy of that tape, but she's never shown it to the public.
You can hear Dana talking at the grave and saying, I brought you silly string, I brought you poppers, because those are the things they love.
Well, at Darlie's, they were planning to renew their wedding vows in August of '98 on their 10-year anniversary, and the boys had asked Darlie, Mommy, can we have silly string instead of the wedding? And she's like, no, guys, it's not appropriate, the silly string stains, and, so me and my ex-fiancé went out and bought 2 dozen balloons. We bought a big sign.
Me and my ex-fiancé. She's still a minor here. She's probably just around 18.
It said, Happy birthday, Devin. We took party poppers that they loved and sprayed streamers, we took silly string.
And you said, Rena, it just seemed like not a proper way to grieve?
No, that's not that it's not a proper way to grieve, but that is sad. Her 7-year-old little boy, 6-year-old little boy wanted to spray silly string at their wedding. Okay, now he's not going to get you.
It's real.
And that is sad. And she didn't cry. She smiled and she snapped her gum and
She smiled and she snapped her gum.
she laughed.
And she was on a lot of medication.
She was on a lot of medication. There ain't no medication that erases grief.
Care what medication.
Here is what Darlie says about that birthday videotape.
For me, that birthday party was for Devin only. It wasn't it wasn't celebrating his death. It was in honor of his life. A lot of people have different ways of grieving the people that, that they love. In the scriptures, it says to rejoice.
We'll be right back to look at the gate, the window. What were the biggest flaws that the jury found in Darlie's version of that night?
She says in the scriptures it says to rejoice, right? But on the stand she was asked if she had ever brought Devin and Damon to church, and she said no.
And how hard was it for the jury to accept that a mom could do this to her own children? We'll be back.
A parent does not murder their children or harm their child and be able to live with it.
How do you know? How does she know?
The murder that shocked the nation. Darlie Routier stabbed her 2 little boys to death.
I didn't murder my children.
And despite a conviction, her family stands by her.
I feel a terrible injustice has been done.
They reveal the pain of having a loved one on death row.
I got to say goodbye. I was the only one who did.
You can't get her out. Can you imagine what that feels like?
One family's story of devotion.
If they were to kill her tomorrow, we would still keep fighting. We would prove her to be innocent.
Next, Lisa.
Ain't nothing yet.
You had a situation where within minutes, you've got 17 people running through your home. You've got officers, paramedics, firefighters, civilians. They're all running through the home. They're all touching the evidence, opening doors, opening windows, running through things, moving things, pushing things aside. We're talking about a small town. Half of the officers on the stand said that they had never even worked a homicide before.
Darlie Routier, now on.
Half the officers on the stand said that they had never worked a homicide before.
Death row, she was just talking about the evidence that convinced jurors of her guilt.
I just want to say, I think it's awful the way that nobody is listening to these 4 people sitting on this stage. They're all related to this woman in a different way. Nobody here thinks that she's guilty, and it seems as though the judge and the jurors and nobody is listening to what these people are saying. I would have done the exact same thing that you, as her sister, for my nephews. If that would have been what they wanted at the time of their death, I would have done that. I would have done. I don't see anything wrong with what she has done. And I think it's terrible that nobody is listening to the mother-in-law, the mother, the sister, and the husband. They would have had some kind of evidence in the past 10 years that this woman would have been capable of a heinous crime. You people need to continue supporting her.
We will.
Barbara, let me ask you, you sat through the trial. Barbara's a writer who was there, pretty much every day?
Every day.
And I would say the family members were not allowed to be there every day because they were witnesses, so they could not sit through as much as you did.
Right.
Did you listen to the family? Was it convincing?
Yeah, but they had Aunt Sandy Aunt Sandy was in the courtroom, and she kept writing down notes, and then she'd go out and show the notes, to them that were sitting in the hallways. And in fact, she got called out for that in front of everybody about writing notes and going out there. But Aunt Sandy's the one that kept saying that the judge fell asleep 17 times on the stand in a packed courthouse. Nobody else saw that except for Aunt Sandy. And nobody else got chastised except for Aunt Sandy.
Listening to you?
I listen to everything. And you're saying no one listened to them? Everyone listened to them. The police listened to them. Everybody, they had a chance to explain things, but when it came down to it, The only thing that was the important thing was the evidence. There was forensic evidence that convicted these people. Crime scene was controlled, completely controlled. There was no tainting of evidence.
What was your comment, ma'am?
Now, she changed her mind. But listen to what she's saying here.
I said, how can you convict someone on circumstantial evidence?
First of all, let me tell you something. And Barbara, if you saw the crime scene pictures, Darlie had plastic runners to cover her white carpet, okay? There were blood drops all over it, probably from Darlie. Those pictures were taken within the first hour of the crime. If you look at those blood drops, the first ones and then the end ones, the middles of the blood drops are gone because there were so many people running back and forth that they violated that crime scene. There was glass found in the carpet from the bottom of their feet. You know, so don't tell me that it wasn't. I walked into that. I know I was there.
If there was glass found in the carpet from the bottom of the officer's feet, then why wasn't there any cuts on Darlie's feet? Because she was running back and forth from that sink back onto the carpet. How come Darlie didn't cut her feet? There was glass on the carpet from the officer's feet. And you think about that. How many times did Darlie run back and forth getting him towels? So it was more than one time, not just one towel. He said there was 21 towels. Right? So how many times did she run back and forth across that stuff and not get cut? But the glass did manage to get into one of the officer's shoe and get dragged onto the carpet. Can anybody answer that? I don't think so.
That night, you were not.
You might have walked in there, and yes, I was not there, but you're also not an expert.
There was glass found in the carpet from the bottom of their feet. You know, so don't tell me that it was seen. There was glass found in the carpet from the bottom of their feet. There was glass found in the carpet from the bottom of their feet. There was glass found in the carpet from the bottom of their feet.
Why didn't Darlie's feet
found in the
get
carpet from the bottom of their feet. You know, so don't tell me that it wasn't. I walked into that. I know I was there that night. You were not.
You might have walked in there, and yes, I was not there, but you also...
She's bitching about everybody else walking all over the crime scene, dragging stuff everywhere. But she walked in there that night. Why didn't she say, no, I can't go in there, there's evidence? She walked in there that night.
I'm not an expert. I have studied this over and over.
I have studied this over and over and over and over, she says. But then she comes back later and says that she didn't see these pictures that she writes about.
They are doing exactly what this young woman is doing, and that is they're listening with their heart, and I don't blame them for that. But you need to listen with your mind.
Let me ask a couple of basic questions, one to this side and one to this side. For this side, why would the state concoct evidence and have it out for Darlie and try to frame her?
I don't think they concocted. I think that at the crime scene there was so much destroyed. But remember, there was a blood sock, a little bit of blood of Devin and Damon's found 75 yards down the alley.
I thought it was Darren's sock.
We don't know whose sock it was.
I don't know why they're saying they don't know whose sock it was, because Darren, this is after court. They determined that that was Darren's sock, and it came from the utility room in a bucket full of old rags and socks that Darren used to clean tools and stuff with. This is what he testified to. But here they're saying they don't know whose sock it was. I'm going to try to figure out why they said that.
Remember, there was a blood sock, a little bit of blood of Devin and Damon's found 75 yards down the alley.
I thought it was Darren's sock.
We don't know.
See, even Lisa said, I thought that was Darren's sock because she read the transcripts. Now here they're pretending like they don't know that Darren testified to that it was his sock.
We don't know whose sock it was, but...
That makes me wonder.
Well, it was an adult-sized sock.
The state and the defense, their timeline does not allow it to be Darlie. So who put that sock down the alley?
Okay, first of all, there is no timeline. I've heard...
There is no timeline. Now, she's an expert. She worked for the DA's office. There is no timeline. And I hear people, like Rich said it, there's a timeline in every... No. In this one, there's no timeline.
We don't know whose sock it was, but...
How do they not know whose sock? Why is Darren not speaking up? See, Darlie Key might not have been in the courtroom when he said that. It's possible. Cirilla wasn't in there. Dana wasn't. Why is Darren not speaking up?
Well, it was an adult-sized sock.
The state and the defense, their timeline does not allow it to be Darlie. So who put that sock down the alley?
Okay, first of all, there is no timeline. I've heard this and heard this and heard this. The timeline is a figment of someone's imagination. There's no timeline. She had all the time in the world to do these things. The time started running when she made the phone call. And that's when the timeline started.
What about the screen? All right? There was a screen cut through an open window, and the screen was down and cut. And the prosecution, I believe, said it was cut from the inside?
Well, the way that it folded out, it folds outward like you would climb out, not inward like you would climb in.
And it was cut from a knife from Darlie's home?
Yes,
cut with a knife?
Not proven.
That was not proven. But it fits.
A fiber,
now look, even the juror said that it was not proven that serrated knife cut that screen. Because she's going on what Charles Lynch said. Charles Lynch he analyzed it. And they even gave Charles Lynch shit. Because he was Charles Lynch had problems. You know, he was drinking, he was a little bit depressed at the time. Because he had just done a plane crash that had 106 bodies. And it traumatized the man. And the Darlie supporters, they done nothing but crack on him. He's a drunk. He couldn't even do his job. He wasn't mentally fit. Because it hadn't been so long that he did that plane crash, 106 bodies.
Take that bread knife out of the scenario. You take the bread knife out of the scenario, okay?
Completely.
This guy, just take it out.
Yeah.
If this guy has a serrated pocket knife, okay? He comes in, he cuts the screen. He has to hold the screen to cut it. He comes in, he puts his pocket knife in his pocket and gets another knife. He already has a knife. Why does he need? What is he going to take the time to put the knife away and get another?
They're saying because it's too small, but she's right. He's already got a knife.
And why is he going to come to to commit a murder and not bring his own weapon?
In the paper, after Darlie was convicted, a gentleman...
Now, there is no confirmation of this, because we checked of what Darlie Key's about to say.
Someone wrote an editorial this 70s, and they were talking about how they were in bed one night, and someone went around slicing the screens until they found a window that was open. They found a small window, climbed over that window, down over the sink, just like a snake, was rummaging through their drawers, and the detective told him it was probably to get a bigger knife. The man actually went in their bedroom, their TV was on, and he came within 2 feet of them, because that's where that man's wallet was. They never woke up. And you know what? He said, thank God I didn't, or I might be where Darlie Lynn is at right now, because I live 5 miles from them.
And it happened March the 20th.
We looked, there's no reports. I actually had an RPD guy who was on that case. I asked him to look about that, and he came back and said no, there were no reports of an elderly couple that had a sliced screen with the wallet stolen out of their house. He said there wasn't any reports.
March the 28th or March the 29th before.
Right. You all have to understand, though, this case was tried on the facts of this case, not on Mr. Jones down the street. It was on these facts.
Why would a woman who had no history of mental illness, no history of drug use that I know of?
But she did. She was developing a history of mental illness. People who write about committing suicide have some mental issues.
Of no history of abusing her children or affairs that were substantiated in the marriage, etc. Suddenly, snap and become a psychotic maniac capable of killing her kids.
She didn't kill 2 out of 3. The human mind is a strange thing, and their witness as to the wounds, Dr. DeMaio, he said, desperate people do desperate things.
So something snapped, whatever. All right, let's get more into that.
I got and premeditate. Those two things don't go together.
And they said she premeditated.
You either premeditated, knocked out her face.
Had all the time in the world, but then decided to kill her kids.
Darlie ultimately took the stand. The question I want to get to is, was that a smart thing? The prosecution said that she ended up being their very best witness. We'll talk to one court observer when we come back. Talking today about the case of Darlie Routier. She is currently on death row for the stabbing death of her 5-year-old son, Damon. Her other boy, Devin, also was stabbed to death. She was only convicted of killing the one boy because in Texas, if someone is murdered under the age of 6, that is automatically capital punishment. I want you to meet Susie McDaniel. She was a trial observer.
I love this part.
You were there most of the time?
Yes, all but the first day.
All but the first day. Mm-hmm. Why do you say it was a big mistake that Darlie took the stand in her own defense?
I had told the family throughout the trial, they were sitting outside, that Darlie really did need to show some emotion because there just wasn't any. I know there's excuses about the medication and all that. I've done medication. I cried. But it worried me that...
Hey, wait. I do medication too, you know, the same that Darlie does. And it also stifles you. It puts a ceiling on what you feel.
So they talk a lot about Beja having mental problems, known mental problems. You know, I put some medical records up and where it showed I have some depression, you know, and I'm getting something for that. But they want to talk about everybody else that has mental problems, right? And here Darlie Key is admitting to taking medication, the same that Darlie does. So does she have mental problems too, and we shouldn't listen to her? Because that's what you were saying about Beja, Danelle, that she had mental issues. They don't give you medication for mental issues unless you have them.
But it never covers grief. Right. It never has, and it never will.
Oh, you thought she didn't seem remorseful?
Let me tell you.
Did she seem like a cold-blooded killer to you?
Let me tell you. What happened was Doug Mulder, their attorney, would throw out these huge blown-up pictures of these slaughtered children or bloody clothing or whatever, and you could see everybody in the courtroom looking right at Darlie, waiting for some horror. My God, her children have just been slaughtered, you know. Nothing. It was...
Darren, did you talk to her about that? Was she aware that her courtroom demeanor was sending such a powerful message?
But I told
I didn't know because nobody was really ever talking to me about it. I mean, I'm on Paxil, I still am, and I'm telling you, it just flattens you completely across.
He's on Paxil. Wow, is that another mental diagnosis that we're having here? I mean, because somebody was getting, a supporter was getting at me about you know, or I take Vistaril for my depression, you know. So and Danelle keeps saying that I'm legit got mental problems, but here you've got Darren admitting to being on depressive drugs, and your mom being on. Did they got mental problems or something?
Have you seen me cry? Everybody. Those were my boys that died. I was there. I saw the blood. I blew into my own son's chest that was split wide open in front of me. Have you ever seen me cry? We're all different.
Yes,
we're different people.
Yes, I did.
You know?
Yes, I did.
Why weren't you considered a suspect?
Well, wasn't I? I was.
Yep.
They eliminated you fairly quickly?
First 4 hours, they questioned me. They asked Darlie, was it Darren? Was it Darren?
So here's the first suspect. The first 4 hours, he was questioned. They took him. As a matter of fact, they photographed him totally nude. They didn't do that to Darlie. He was the first suspect. He was the first one to be questioned. So there goes your James Quran walked in there, and within 20 minutes, he said Darlie did it. There that went. Bye-bye.
Tall like Darren. Did he have, you know, long hair like Darren? And Darlie was like, no, I saw him come down the stairs.
But if they didn't
have
believe,
a shirt on.
if they didn't believe Darlie didn't do it, why would they believe Darlie when she said it wasn't you?
I don't know.
I don't think they really eliminated Darren until later on when they got down to the courtroom, because they were still out asking questions of the neighbors.
No, they didn't have...
Oh, so they didn't follow up on anything, people say. They didn't eliminate Darren until later. See, the supporters keep saying they didn't follow any leads. They had tunnel vision on Darlie right from the get-go. This is what Danelle's saying today. But her mother is saying they weren't finished asking the neighbors, gathering information. Let me run that back by you again.
If they didn't believe Darlie didn't do it, why would they believe Darlie when she said it wasn't you?
I don't know.
I don't think they really eliminated Darren until later on when they got down to the courtroom, because they were still out asking questions of the neighbors.
No, they didn't have a diary on me.
No,
they didn't have...
they didn't have him chalking and spraying silly string. That's exactly right.
No, they didn't have a diary of him talking about wanting to die and kill himself.
That was right.
And
wanting to die, killing herself, about 3 weeks before this happened.
And they also did not have forensic evidence pointing to him.
But now the same diary that you referred to where she said, Damon, Devin, and Drake, please forgive me for what I'm about to do, this apparent suicide that she even said to the police was a suicide note.
Which she told them where it was at.
In that same entry, though, she talks about how the boys are her life and how she loved them so much.
And I believe that. I believe that she was probably very, very sick, mentally sick.
But if you believe that,
I think she's been sick a long time, Serelda. I think that your whole family lives in a beautiful world of total denial.
Bam!
She was probably...
This woman says it perfectly. And I've used this clip before where she says your family lives in a beautiful world of perfect denial. Listen.
Very, very sick, mentally sick.
But if you believe that,
I think she's been sick a long time, Serelda. I think that your whole family lives in a beautiful world of total denial.
Susie.
You hear that, audience, Danelle?
I wanted her to be innocent. I wanted her to not have done that. I loved y'all. I
gave her questions and tested her like any prosecutor. She had no idea.
You just wait till we get on that stand. We're going to set the record straight. You were on it.
After she was found guilty.
You were on the stand, though. Y'all never told anything other than she was a good mother.
But then what do you want us to make it up?
You'd have had to, I guess.
Bam!
Right. Excuse me.
Yeah, one more response, and I've got to go to break.
She was found guilty.
You were on the stand, though. Y'all never told anything other than she was a good mother.
But then what do you want us to make it up?
You'd have had to, I guess.
Oh, right. Excuse me.
Yeah, the audience isn't buying the bullshit.
Yeah, one more response, and I've got to go to break.
You're not allowed on the stand until the death.
You tell me sitting outside. You wait till we get up there and we put on our evidence and we do this.
How is it that you were outside talking to us the whole time?
Yeah, you were out there.
We know everything about
I did
your
come
life.
out there quite often. The psychiatrist had the personality of a dog. And I didn't want to listen to it, so I came
When the
outside.
Lisa, when the psychiatrist was there, I was sitting outside. And I said, Susie, I think you need to be in there listening. We've got an expert in there. And she said, boring.
That's right.
She didn't listen to the expert.
No, but I want to tell you what, I had the same...
But Rena was there the whole time. It was her job. Barbara was there the whole time. All right, let's pick this up when we come back. And excuse me, please. I want to get into more of this if you so choose, and also the community. The early news reports were very supportive, a lot of love and outpouring towards this family. But when they found out that Darlie was a suspect and the family still believed in her innocence, they turned on the family, and your support may have done her more harm than good. We'll be right back.
Bam! And even Stephen Cooper says that your support is doing her more harm than good. He put that in writing, and it's still happening to this day. Because people see you lying, and they wonder why you're lying, Danelle.
We are kind of rehashing a lot of the evidence, much of which was circumstantial but was convincing enough to a jury to convict Darlie Routier of stabbing her son to death. We hit a couple of things. One that we didn't carry through with was the sock. Remember talking about the sock that we said, was it the boy's sock? Was it Darren's sock? We weren't sure.
A sock. It was like a man's athletic sock.
Now, this is one thing that stuck with me, folks, with the evidence.
I never considered this before. They're sitting there pretending like they don't know that sock came from the utility room. It was talked about on the stand. It was talked about it was Darren's sock. Darren said it was his sock. He's sitting right there. So why are they portraying it to this public out here that they don't know whose sock that was?
There was no blood leading up to the sock. Darlie herself was wounded. She would have been bleeding. Her blood was not mixed on the sock.
Actually, there was blood. She had cut herself when she came back from dropping that sock. There was blood on the washing machine. There was blood on the utility room door. Yes. And it was Darlie's blood. Let me finish.
1 minute
there was blood on the washing machine. There was blood
How do
on
we know that?
How
did 1 minute after Devin was dead,
the sock,
she called him.
What do you think she did, Barbara, with the sock? You think she dipped the boy's blood into it?
No, I believe she slipped the sock on because in the tip of the sock, of the white sock, are her skin cells. We all shed scales.
That's right.
They were there. When you do that, you gotta imagine I have a sock on. No, y'all said that. When I have a sock on,
no, our expert said that.
Right here is a nickel size. If you come down and hit someone, it's nickel size.
Look at her. She really knows this case. I'm telling you.
You have to remember, this was a bloody scene, but most of the blood was Darlie's blood because she had a spurting wound. The boys, let me finish. The boys, not on the sock, but you're not.
Spurting wound, you were there?
The boys, their wounds were in their lungs, penetrated their lungs, and they were seeping wounds. Seeping wounds barely bleed. Most of the oldest boy, Devin's blood, came when Darren was doing CPR. He was covered with blood at that point. But at the stabbing time, when you come down and you hit the wound, you get DNA, Devin's, right on top of DNA, Damon's. And that's it. We asked the blood spatter expert who was there testifying, who's renowned, Tom Bevel, whose blood would he expect to be on that sock? And he said the boys and a lot of Darlie's. Not one drop of hers was on there, but her skin cells were.
I have a question. Okay, let's say he put his hand on her mouth or he touched Darlie. He attacked Darlie. He cut her in 3 places. He could have touched her skin and got her DNA.
And you know,
woulda, shoulda. That's exactly right. That's what you described.
Her skin cells would have been
on her thing about the same expert that you're talking about. The same expert was on the stand all day long. In order for it to happen the way that he said it happened, because of some of the boy's blood on the gown of Darlie's, he had to admit at the end of the day that she would have had to been cut first and the boys second. So there you go.
Darlie, how do you know this? Not one of y'all were in that courtroom.
That's right.
Not one of
you. The transcript. We have the transcript.
You
weren't there.
Okay, bam.
Let's put a pin.
Bam. He just said, they all just said that they have the transcripts. So why are they avoiding the fact that Darren testified that sock was his? They're all sitting there pretending like they don't know that sock was Darren's. But now they're just sitting there going, we've got the transcripts. How do you know that?
Had to been cut first and the boys second. So there you go.
Darlie, how do you know this? Not one of y'all were in that courtroom.
That's right.
Not
We
one of
have the transcripts and we have people who weren't. You weren't there.
Okay, let's put a pin in the sock issue.
They're all going on. They're all saying that they have the transcripts so they know what happened in that courtroom. There went your transcript errors.
For now, please, for this question. Hold on.
Were there insurance policies on your
two $5,000 insurance policies on each boy?
And it's just a family.
And that never figured in. Did
she take a lot of that?
That was not part of it.
If Darren was right upstairs, why didn't she yell for her husband before calling 911?
She did.
I was there already.
She called for Darren.
I was
She came to
there
the
like
bottom of the
that.
stairs.
She
and
did not
screamed
take
Devin.
a, she didn't take a polygraph.
911 1 second after Devin died, right? But then she called for Darren.
No, we didn't say 1 second,
No,
Marina.
no.
We said 1 minute. 1 minute. Check the transcript.
Okay, back
1
here,
minute.
please.
Check the transcript again.
One question: if my understanding that the boy ran to the door rather than to his mother after.
No, he was walking with her. He walked for
He was
us.
right behind
He
her.
went to
His
her.
mommy. Why would
There
he
was a
run?
fear.
Another thing,
There was-
Liza,
Right.
you've got a child with 6 mortal wounds walking, and they said he couldn't even talk. He could make noises, but he's walking with 6 mortal wounds in his back. I've seen
They
them.
said that proved
I've seen them.
I don't know if the audience heard. I didn't hear. Was there a polygraph?
What'd she just say?
Yes, there was.
Yes.
And what
They
was
knew it. Child with 6 mortal wounds walking, and they said he couldn't even talk. He could make noises, but he's walking with 6 mortal wounds in his back. I've seen
They
them.
said that proved
I've seen them.
I don't know if the audience.
I've seen them all. I've seen them all. The pictures.
Heard. I didn't hear. Was there a polygraph?
There was a fear.
Another thing, Liza,
Right.
you've got a child with 6 mortal wounds walking, and they said he couldn't even talk. He could make noises, but he's walking with 6 mortal wounds in his back. I've seen
They
them.
said that proved
I've seen them.
I've seen them all. Looks like the internet's forever, isn't it?
I don't know if the audience heard. I didn't hear. Was there a polygraph?
Yes, there was.
Yes.
And what
They knew it, and she failed.
I'm going to tell you this right now. What you're about to see is why Barb Davis changed her mind. Barb Davis swears up and down that she didn't see those pictures. And she changed her mind because she didn't see them pictures. That's what she says. What about all the other evidence that she's talking about right here?
No, she
She did not fail it. I know what you said. I know what she said when she failed it. She failed it. She did not.
She failed it.
I have one more
know
question.
something?
You know what? You can get sued for that.
When was her throat cut?
Good.
When the question
Did
is,
you hear
when
that?
was her throat slashed?
I know what you said. I know what
Listen to Cyrilda right here.
she said when she failed it. She failed it. She did
I have one more question.
Now, Cyrilda's right in her face. And she's going, you could be sued for that. And Barb Davis says, I'm not bothered. But she was bothered.
You know what? You can get sued for that.
When was her throat cut?
Good.
When the question is, when was her throat slashed?
Hear it?
I know what you said. I know what she said when she failed it. She failed it.
She did not.
I have one more question.
You know what? You can get sued for that.
When was her throat cut?
Good.
When the question is, when was her throat slashed? Before or after the boys?
Now, Cyrilda threatened to sue her. And Barb Davis said, I'm not bothered. She goes, good. And I'm not worried about it. She's good.
They're experts, their own experts.
If this is a murder
Now, Barb Davis is sitting there thinking about being sued right now.
capable, Darren, of inflicting wounds that severe on the boys, why wouldn't he have just taken her head off if he had that much power and strength?
Well, her necklace was completely embedded into this wound. When the paramedics came, the necklace was embedded completely inside of this wound.
Yes.
This wound went to the bone.
Right. So, I mean, you know, and I mean, we're talking about deep. This thing was
5.5
only...
inches.
The what?
5.5 inches into that little boy's body.
Oh, I know. But
5.5
she's not asking me that.
This is not deep.
He was probably not fighting. She was.
This case got enormous attention in the press. Our question, did the media perhaps taint Darlie's case? We'll move on after this.
She murdered her children, but the family still stands by her.
I feel a terrible injustice has been done.
Their story of devotion next. Lisa.
We've got a heated discussion going here. You can imagine for this family, their loved one, a mother, a wife, a daughter is on death row. They are, in essence, fighting to clear her name, fighting to save her life. The conversation actually got a little too emotional, I think, for Dana, who has left the stage for a little while. The media glommed onto this. The public fascinated with this. This happened after Susan Smith. And remember how we all felt so strongly for her. Our hearts broke, and we grieved with this mother who went on national...
Yeah, I didn't realize that Dana had left the stage twice. She leaves again after Lisa asks her what Darlie's state of mind was that night.
Television, and told us that she loved her children and she wanted to find the real killer, and we bought it, and then we felt so betrayed when we realized that she had sent those kids off to their death.
That's terrible.
Becky Sebastian is a reporter with the Rowlett Lakeshore Times. What was the Susan Smith case a factor in the public accepting that a mother could do this?
You couldn't discredit that it wasn't. I don't know that you'd say it was a major factor, but it had to be a factor. Anytime a mother is found guilty of killing her own children, it's a factor.
Darren, you're the one who said that you believe we're teaching our children that mommy can kill you.
We're allowing our kids to accept it, or as a society, are we accepting that that's a proper way? You know, what if? What if? I mean, you know, you can't look at that 97% of the time a child is killed in the house is done by an adult or a parent or someone else. Those statistics are so far leaned towards one direction that if anyone is arrested for a crime and is in that house, you know, you don't have a chance. You don't have a fighting chance.
I know you will still be covering the appeal in this case, so, you know, I'm not asking you to give your opinion on the evidence or the guilt or innocence, but do you think that the media tainted this trial?
There's always some media that's going to sensationalize and take advantage of it. I don't necessarily want to take credit that they're journalism or media, but there's different forms, and yes, they will. I don't think the majority of the Metroplex did.
This jury was not sequestered?
No. And one of the first things that came out the night that the boys were killed, the first thing that came out on TV was that there were $200,000 insurance policies on these boys. Then we heard that the police released a statement out of her diary, and as I told you before, that letter that was written to Devin, Damon, and Drake, all they released to the public and to the press was, please forgive me for what I'm about to do.
And
that
not the whole,
well, now what does that sound like to you? Instead of reading the whole...
Lisa?
And I said to one of the journalists, I said, why didn't you, as a responsible journalism person, go to them and demand that you wanted to see the whole letter? Because you knew it was taken out of context.
Who had a question?
I have a question. I would like to know what evidence and motive there is for someone other than Darlie to commit these murders.
We don't know.
She thought that she was being stalked, but...
I believe Darlie was the victim of this attack. I think she was meant to be killed, and I think the boys were an accident. They got in the way.
So why would he go in and kill two innocent boys instead of Darlie?
They meant to kill her, too.
They would not leave those babies dead and leave alive the one person that could have...
And no neighbor saw anybody running from the house?
Again, her wound was within 1 millimeter of her carotid artery.
1 millimeter now. 1 millimeter.
Maybe she was trying to commit suicide because she was depressed. Maybe she got lucky and missed it. And if she's bleeding and she messed up in her suicide, you think she's going to try it again? No.
Okay, but she's right-handed. Explain this one to the bone, and explain these tears up here, and explain this chest wound over here. Explain
I don't have the evidence. I'm just saying there are other possibilities.
I think it wouldn't matter what you say. We had a specialist, the only specialist that talked about it, who said that these wounds were not self-inflicted. He said he demonstrated it.
Well, how come you keep? They keep saying that they've talked to this doctor and we've got this specialist, but nobody's ever released that where it's not self-inflicted. Where's that at?
There. Talk to me about the community response to the family's supports. Did that work against Darlie?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I have heard over and over from everybody that knows anything about this case, that family's hurting. If they, in fact, did come up by some miracle, somebody else, there's nobody listening to them. Nobody believes them.
I got to go to break, but Barbara, I want to ask you when you come
Nobody
back.
believes
There's one...
fact, I have heard over and over from everybody that knows anything about this case, that family's hurting.
That family's hurting them.
If they, in fact, did come up by some miracle, somebody else, there's nobody listening to them. Nobody believes them.
I got to go to break, but Barbara, I want to ask you when you come back. There's one bit of, I guess, what could be called evidence that you find compelling, and it points a finger sort of at the family. Can you share that with us when we come back? Okay, take a quick break. Be right back. a chance to get some questions in here. So let's go first over to you.
You guys said that she didn't have like any problems, like mental problems or anything, but then you said that she was taking medication.
After the boys died.
Before she was taking diet pills.
Yeah. Fin.
Well, and the other thing that you had said that she was mentally stable and everything was happy and fine.
People can know.
But then you're saying a month earlier she's writing a letter in her journal that she's contemplating suicide.
The rest of what you talk about in context, forgive me for what I'm about to do to Devin, Damon, and Drake. My life has been such a hard fight for a long time. I cannot find the strength to keep fighting anymore. I love you three more than anything else in this world, and I want all three of you to be healthy and happy. I don't want you to see a miserable person every time you look at me.
Toby Shook, who was the prosecutor in this case, had Darlie on the stand and read that and said, Darlie, why so desperate? And she said, I don't know.
Well,
why so desperate?
We'll be right back.
That
Gotta
is
go.
desperate.
Tough hour for both sides of this issue. I want to thank you all for sharing your points of view with us today, and we're going to continue with the story tomorrow. What happened?
Problems or anything, but then you said that she was taking medication.
After the boys died.
Before she was taking diet.
Come after you and want your comments.
They came after everybody, but I had told all the other jurors that since they did not want to do it, that I would be their voice.
Yes.
I just want to know why I put it behind me. I'm pretty tired of this. Really am.
Did the jurors all become sort of celebrities, as they frequently do in a high-profile case like this? Did everyone come after you and want your comments?
They came after everybody, but I had told all the other jurors that since they did not want to do it, that I would be their voice.
Yes.
I just want to know why.
Interesting, huh? I'm going to do part 2 some other time.